The Echoes of SIlverood by William Mathews. SIlverood was a time or place he would stand still, now forgotten by the modern world. Surrounded by an ancient forest that pressed in from all sides, it was a place where the trees whispered secrets, and the wind carried voices from the past. The townsfolk lived simple lives. There was an undercurrent of something darker, something that no one spoke of openly. The Echoes. Luna Harker had left Silverwood 10 years ago, vowing never to return. But life had a way of pulling you back to the places you least wanted to go. Her mother's death shattered that vow, forcing her to confront the ghosts of her past. As she drove down the winding road that led to the heart of Silverwood, she felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The town looked just as she remembered it, yet somehow different, more decayed, more forgotten. The Harker house stood at the edge of the town, where the forest loomed like a sentinel. It was old, creaky house with a peeling paint and a saggy roof. As Luna stepped out of the car and looked up at it, she felt a wave of unease wash over her. This house she had grown up in, the house her father had died, and the house that she had finally fled from the tragedy. Now, it was just a house filled with memories, all of them heavy and suffocating. Her brother, Gabriel, was waiting for her on the porch. He was thin and chin-uppered, his face grown and his eyes hollow. They hugged awkwardly, the distance between them palpable. Luna could feel the tension in his body, the weight of something unsaid. "Gabriel," she said softly, as they pulled apart, "it's good to see you." He nodded, but said nothing, his gaze drifting towards the forest. Luna followed his gaze, felt a shiver run down her spine. The trees seemed closer than before, their darker silhouettes pressing in on the house like a living entity. "I've been wearing things," Gabriel finally said, as his voice barely above a whisper. Luna frowned. "What kind of things?" He hesitated and shook his head. "It's nothing, just the wind, probably." But Luna knew better. She had heard the stories growing up, the tales of the echoes, ghostly sounds that people claimed were the voices of those who had died in Silverwood. Her mother had always dismissed them as nonsense, but Luna had never been so sure. Now, standing here after all these years, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Inside the house, the air was thick, with the scent of dust and decay. The furniture was covered in sheets, and the floor creaked underfoot. It was as if this house itself was groaning under the weight of time. Luna felt a pang of sadness as she looked around. This had no longer been her home. This had been her home once, a place of warmth and laughter. Now it's just a relic of a life that no longer existed. As they walked through the house, Luna noticed that Gabriel was keeping his distance, avoiding her gaze. There was a tension in him that she couldn't quite place, a sense of unease that seemed to radiate from him. She wanted to ask him what was wrong, but his words stuck in her throat. That night, after Gabriel had gone to bed, Luna sat in the living room, surrounded by ghosts of her past. The wind hollowed outside, rattling the windows, and for a moment she thought she heard something else, a faint whisper, like a voice carried on the wind. She froze, straining to listen, but the sound was gone as quickly as it had come. Shaking her head, she dismissed it as her imagination, but deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. The echoes were just stories. She told herself tales to scare children. Yet, as she sat there in the dark, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more than that they were real, and that they were trying to tell her something. The days of Silverwood were long and lonely. Luna spent most of her time sorting through her mother's belongings, trying to decide what to keep and what to discard. It was a painful process, each item a reminder that life had been lost. The house was filled with memories, and each door she opened, Luna felt like she was peeling back layers of the past. exposing old wounds that had never truly healed. Gabriel was distant, spending most of his time in his room in the woods. He had always been quiet, even as a child, and now there was something different about him, something that made him uneasy. He avoided her questions about her mother's last days, brushing them off with vague answers. It was as if he was hiding something, something that he couldn't or wouldn't share. The strange noises in the house continued. At first they were faint, almost imperceptible. A creak here, a whisper there, but as the days passed they grew louder, more distinct. Luna tried to ignore them, telling herself that it was just the old house setting, but the sounds persisted, gnawing at her nerves. One evening, as she was going through a box of old photographs, she heard it again, a whisper, a soft and insistent. This time it was clearer, more than just the wind. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She listened. The sound was faint, like a voice just out of reach, but she couldn't make it out with the words. It was as if someone was trying to speak to her, but the message was garbled, lost in ether. Gabriel, she called out, her voice trembling. He appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. What is it? Do you hear that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gabriel stared at her for a moment, shook his head. It's just the wind, Luna. This old house makes all kinds of noises. But Luna wasn't convinced. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of fear he quickly masked. She wanted to press him, to demand answers. The words caught in her throat. Instead, she nodded and tried to push the thoughts away. They lingered, a constant nagging at the back of her mind. Later that night, unable to sleep, Luna found herself wandering the house, drawn to the attic. It was a place she had always avoided, even as a child. The attic was dark and cramped, filled with old, forgotten things that no one ever used. Something was pulling her there now, an inexplicable urge that she couldn't resist. The stairs creaked under her weight as she climbed, each step echoing in silence. The air grew colder as she neared the top, and she shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. And when she reached the attic, she hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open. The attic was exactly as she remembered it, cluttered with old furniture, boxes, and dusty cobwebs hanging from the beams. There was something else, something new. In the corner, barely visible in the dim light, was a small wooden chest. It was old, the wood worn and cracked, but it was unfamiliar to her. Curiosity piqued. Luna crossed the room and knelt beside the chest. It was locked, but the lock was rusted and fragile. With a little effort, she managed to break it open. Inside, found a bundle of papers, yellow with age. She carefully unfolded them. She realized that they were pages from a journal, her mother's journal. Luna's heart skipped a beat as she began to read. The entries were dated years ago, long before her mother's illness had taken hold. At first, they were mundane, recounting the deadly routines of the life of SIlverood. But as she read further, the tone changed. The entries became darker, more erratic, filled with fear and confusion. I hear them at night, one entry said. The voices, they whisper to me, telling me things I don't understand. I try to ignore them, but they grow louder every day. I'm slated for sleep, afraid of what they might say if I listen too closely. Another entry dated a few weeks later was even more disturbing. I saw him today, in the woods. I know it wasn't real, but it felt so real. He was standing there, just watching me, his eyes filled with sadness. I think he's trying to tell me something, and I don't know what. I'm so scared. Luna's hands trembled as she turned the pages, each entry revealing more about her mother's descent into fear and paranoia. The last entry was the most chilling of all. They're coming for me. I can feel it. The echoes. They want me to join them, to become one of them. I can't resist much longer. I'm so tired. So very tired. The words sent a chill down Luna's spine. She had always known her mother was troubled in her later years, but she had never imagined this. The echoes, the very thing that townspeople whispered about, had driven her mother to the brink of madness? Luna closed the journal, her mind reeling. What had her mother seen? What were the echoes really? And why was Gabriel so reluctant to talk about it? The next morning she confronted Gabriel. He was in the kitchen, staring out the window with a distant look in his eyes. Gabriel, I found something last night, Luna said, holding up the journal. Mom's journal. She was hearing things, seeing things, the echoes. She was terrified of them. Gabriel's face paled as he looked away. You shouldn't have read that, he said quietly. Why not? You deserve to know the truth, what really happened to Mom, and what about Dad? She wrote about seeing him in the woods, but that's impossible, isn't it? Gabriel sighed and rubbed his temples, as if trying to ease a headache. It's not what you think, Luna. The echoes, they're real, but they're not just sounds. They're more than that. I don't know how to explain it, but they're connected to this place, to Silverwood, and to us. Luna stared at him, her heart pounding. What do you mean? Gabriel hesitated, then finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom wasn't the first to hear them. I've heard them too, for years. Ever since Dad died. Luna's breath caught in her throat. You've heard them? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you to worry, Gabriel said, his voice tinged with guilt. I thought if I ignored them, they'd go away, but they didn't. They only got worse. Luna's mind erased as she tried to make sense of what she was saying. And Dad, what about him? Did he hear them too? Gabriel nodded, his expression grim. I think so. But he never talked about it, not to me anyway. I think that's why he went to the woods that day. He was trying to find answers. Luna's heart ached as she thought of her father, the man she loved so many years ago. And did he find them? Gabriel's silence was answering enough. The echoes had claimed her father just as they had claimed her mother, and now they were coming for her. Luna sat at the kitchen table, her hands gripping the edge of her mother's journal, as if it were a lifetime. The words on the page swirled in her mind, a chaotic jumble of fear, confusion, despair. The echoes were real. They had driven her mother to the brink of madness, but what were they, and why did they seem to be connected to her family? Gabriel sat across from her, his eyes pale and drawn. It looked as if he hadn't slept in days, dark circles shadowing his eyes. Luna, he said quietly, there's more. I didn't want to tell you, but I think you need to know the truth. Luna's heart skipped a beat. What is it? Gabriel took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he reached for his coffee cup. Dad didn't just die in the woods. He was found in a clearing near the old oak tree, the one that everybody in town avoids. They say it's cursed that something terrible happened there a long time ago, and no one really knows what. Luna felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the oak tree. It was a place they had always warned to stay away from his children. What happened to him? Gabriel hesitated, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and sorrow. He was changed. When they found him, he was sitting against the tree, his eyes wide open, but there was nothing to him, like he was staring at something no one else could see. And his face, it was twisted, like he was terrified, but there was no signs of struggle, no wounds, nothing to explain it. Luna's stomach churned as she imagined her father in his final moments, alone and afraid. Alone and afraid in the woods. And you think the echoes had something to do with it? Gabriel nodded slowly. Mom always believed they did. She thought they were trying to warn us, to tell us something important, but she never could figure out what. And after Dad died, she became obsessed. She spent hours in the woods trying to listen to them, trying to understand. Luna's mind erased as she tried to piece together the puzzle. Her father's death, her mother's descent into madness, the echoes. They all seemed so real. They were all connected, but how? What was the secret that the echoes were trying to reveal? I have to go to the oak tree, Luna said suddenly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Gabriel's eyes widened in alarm. No, Luna, you can't. It's too dangerous. Whatever's out there, it's not something you can fight. It's not something you can reason with. But I have to know, Luna insisted, her voice trembling with determination. I can't just sit here and do nothing. I have to find out what happened to Mom and Dad. I have to understand. Gabriel looked at her, his expression torn between fear and resignation. He knew there was no stopping her, just as there had been no stopping their mother. If you go, he said, finally, you need to be careful. Stay close to the house. When you hear anything strange, you come back right away. Promise me. Luna nodded, though she wasn't sure if she could keep that promise. There was a part of her that was terrified with him, what she might find in the woods. But another part was that driven by that insatiable need for answers, she couldn't ignore the echoes any longer. She had to face them, no matter the cost. The next morning, Luna set out for the woods, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The forest was thick and dark, the trees towering above her like ancient sentinels. The air was cool and damp, filled with the earthly scent of moss and decaying leaves. As she walked, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that something was following her, just out of sight. The oak tree loomed in the distance, its gnarled branches twisted bare. It was an ancient tree, its bark scarred and blackened as if struck by lightning. The ground around it was bare, devoid of the usual undergrowth, as if nothing could survive in its shadow. As Luna approached the tree, she felt a sense of dread wash over her. The air seemed to grow colder. The forest around her felt eerily silent. She hesitated, for an instant screaming to her to turn back, but she was forced to keep moving forward. When she reached the tree, she stopped, staring up at its twisted branches. There was something about the tree that felt wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. The bark was rough and splintered, and she had reached out to touch it. She felt a jolt of cold shoot through her hand, and then she heard it. The echoes. They were louder, more distinct, as if the tree was a conduit for the voices. They whispered to her, a cacophony of sounds that overlapped and blended together, making it impossible to discern individual words. But the message was clear. They were calling to her, urging for her to come closer, to listen. Luna closed her eyes and tried to focus, to separate the voices from one another. They were desperate, pleading as if they were trapped and needed her help. She strained to hear them, to understand what they were saying, but the harder she tried, the more elusive the words became. Please, she whispered, her voice trembling. Tell me what you want. Tell me what happened to my father. For a moment, the echoes seemed to grow quieter, as if they were considering her request. And then slowly, the voices began to coalesce, forming a single, clear message. Join us. Luna's eyes snapped open, her heart racing. The words were unmistakable, a command that sent a shiver of fear down her spine. The echoes didn't want to warn her or help her. They wanted to claim her, just as they had claimed her father and mother. She stumbled back, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The tree seemed to loom larger in its branches, reaching out towards her, like gasping hands. The echoes grew louder, more insistent, their voices rising to a defending crescendo. Join us. Luna turned and ran, her heat pounding against the forest floor. The trees seemed to close in around her, their branches scattering at her skin like she had pushed through the underbrush. The echoes followed her, their voices echoing in her ears, a constant, inescapable presence. By the time she reached the house, she was shaking, her mind whirling with fear and confusion. Gabriel was waiting for her on the porch, his face with worry. "What happened?" he demanded, his voice filled with concern. Luna could barely speak, her throat dry and raw from running. "The echoes, they want us. They want me to join them." Gabriel's face washed in, and he pulled her into a tight embrace. "I told you it was dangerous," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I should have never let you go." Luna clung to him, her mind reeling from the revelation that the echoes weren't just voices, they were a force, a malevolent presence that she wanted to claim her, to pull her into the world, and she had no idea how to stop them. In the days that followed, Luna became increasingly withdrawn. She rarely left the house when her thoughts consumed by the echoes and the revelation of the oak tree. The voices were always there, lurking at the edges of her consciousness, a constant, insistent presence that she couldn't escape. Gabriel tried to confront her, or comfort her, but he was struggling with his own demons. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface for years had come to boil, and he could feel the weight of the echoes pressing down on him. He tried to protect Luna, but he had failed, and now the same force that had claimed their parents was coming for them. Luna spent hours poring over her mother's journal, searching for answers, but the words offered no solace. Instead, they only deepened her sense of despair. The echoes were relentless, and she was beginning to understand why her mother had succumbed to their pool. The voices were like a siren's call, promising answers, peace and release from the pain of living. Luna was struggling to resist them. One evening, as she had sat down the window, staring out at the darkening forest, she felt the echoes growing stronger. They were no longer just whispers, they were clear, almost as if they were right beside her, speaking directly into her ear. "Join us," they whispered, their voices filled with longing and sorrow. "We can end your pain. We can bring you peace." Nona's heart ached with profound sadness. She was so tired of the fear, the confusion, and the endless questions that had no answers. The echoes promised an end to it all, a final, quiet escape from the horrors that had plagued her family for years. Gabriel found her sitting by the window, her eyes vacant and distant. "Luna," he said softly, kneeling beside her, "please don't listen to them. You have to fight this." She turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can, Gabriel. You're so strong. I don't know how much longer I can hold on." Gabriel's heart broke at the sight of his sister, so lost and fragile. He had already lost his parents to the echoes, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing Luna, too. "We'll figure this out," he said, his voice trembling with determination. "We'll find a way to stop them. I won't let them take you." And even as he said those words, a part of him knew that it was too late. The echoes were already inside her, whispering in insidious promises, and he didn't know how to fight them. That night, Luna made her decision. As the echoes whispered to her, calling her to the forest, she felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. She was tired of fighting, tired of the endless fear and confusion. The echoes promised an end to all of it, and she was ready to accept their offer. She left the house quietly, slipping into the night like a shadow. The forest was dark and silent, the trees standing like silent sentinels. As she walked over to the oak tree, the echoes guided her, their voices gentle, soothing, leading her to her final destination. When Gabriel woke up the next morning, he found her room empty. Panic seized him as he searched the house, but he knew deep down where she had been. He ran to the woods, his heart pounding with dread. That's when he reached the oak tree. It was too late. Luna was gone, her body cold and still at the base of the tree. Her face was peaceful, free of the fear and pain that had haunted her in life. The echoes had claimed her, just as they had claimed their parents. Gabriel fell to his knees, his grief overwhelmed. The echoes were still there, whispering their promises, and now they were silent too. He was alone, the last of the Harkers, with the only echoes for companies, and they would haunt him for the rest of his days. Hope you guys enjoyed this story. This is The Echoes of SIlverood by William Mathews.